Great. So thank you very much, everybody, for being with us today. We'll start to present this webinar about dare to detect cyber threats, because you know that we all feel, and you maybe as a CISO, we all feel and we all know that it's a war outside your company, and actually, all attackers would like to come into your network. But are you aware that maybe they are already into your network? And that's what we'll try to discover today. And we'll move forward just because we'll present ourselves, and so you will know who we are. So you have the chat box who is available, so you can talk to us, and you also have the Q&A box where you can drop us some questions. If it's relevant to respond to your questions in the real time, we will do. Otherwise, we'll keep the question for the Q&A session for the end of the webinar. So today we'll present who are the speakers very quickly. We'll show you a quick intro of Logpoint and OHB in a few seconds. What are the gaps and challenges from a log view only? What SecOps requires to be successful in such scenario? And OHB, so it's an MSSP partner who will present a testimonial on the way they are using our solutions. And
by the way,
we'll see.
If people are thinking that the scenario is a typo there, it is not. It's scenario, right?
Scenario. Yes, scenario is when you have several scenario. One scenario in Italian and two scenarii. It's because the I in Italian is the mark of the plural.
All right.
Super. Next. So who is talking to you today? So I'm Jérôme. I'm Global Customer Marketing Manager at Logpoint. Nicolas, who are you?
Yes, my name is Nicolas. I'm the team and technical lead for external cybersecurity business here at OHB Digital. OHB as a company actually produces satellites and goes to space for over 40 years now. So there's a lot of intrinsic security requirements and security know-how in the company. And we went out and said, okay, what of this know-how from space security can we bring to the mid-market segment here in Germany? And that's why we are now an MSSP and successfully deploying Logpoint. And also we are already, before Logpoint NDR was acquired, we were already using Munin, as it was called then, as an MSSP. So quite an early adopter on that front as well.
Super. Thanks, Nicolas. Who are you, Antonio?
I cannot beat that intro from Nicolas, especially with the satellites and everything. My name is Antonio. I'm part of the product team, working here as a director of product at Logpoint. Being the glue person across the multitude of heroes that we have, taking forward our goodness of product value that we deliver in terms of SIEM, SOAR, NDR, and much more, focused in Europe mainly, but across the world, as we can actually see from the attendees' point of view. And Logpoint, as eventually Jérôme will tell you, it's a more than a decade old company, focused exactly at solving the problems of cybersecurity. Thank you.
Super. Next, please, Antonio. So Antonio is driving the deck.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So now a few words about Logpoint and OHB. Super. Thank you. So just a few words about Logpoint. So we are safeguarding society in a digital world. This is the mantra of Logpoint. We are a Danish company. We're based in Copenhagen, and so European, which is quite important at the moment to recall. We have a few certifications, technical certification, like EAL3+, but we'll be working on the CRA, the Cyber Resilience Act, over the few months, the few coming months. All our investors are European as well. They are Swedish, so based in Sweden. And we have a lot of customers, mainly in defense, health, energy, governments or local governments. So voila, where we are and who we are.
Yeah, and I already said a few words about OHB. We are actually more than 40 years in the space business and more than 30 years in the IT business, running our own shop, but also externally acquired companies. And by now we have more than 1 billion turnover in general in the group, and are working across the globe on this satellite business. But there's also this new thing called OHB Digital, where we are now pooled all of our experience in the IT and cybersecurity space, and have more than 200 colleagues in this space all over Europe. And yeah, I'm here sitting in Bremen, near this place you see there in the picture, which is the headquarter. But yeah, as I said, we are all over Europe with our smaller residuaries. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's go. Do you want to start then? Let's go into the good stuff.
Yeah. So why are we here? I must say I love the picture of the ostrich in a war zone at the start, because it feels kind of like some companies behave that way at the moment. When they just are faced with cybersecurity, choosing solutions, building up their defenses, a lot of people just see that it costs money and doesn't return immediate value on their product, and so they choose to just put their head in the sand and do nothing. But the problem is actual attacks are happening all around us, and it's not just the big companies that get hit, it's all of the mid-market and even the small companies that get hit by ransomware, by credential stealers, by other extortions, and it just is a huge damage to our society and economy as a whole, and it's preventable on many levels. And we just see that there's no single golden bullet, but there's a lot one can do. And even the companies you see here, they probably have done some efforts to protect themselves from attacks, but in the end, still gangs were successful in attacking these companies, and they are probably currently facing massive repercussions for it. For example, also in the European market, it's not just the immediate damage through getting ransomware and encrypted and needing to roll back and handling all the stolen data and managing suppliers relationships afterwards, but it's also affects GDPR. So the regulator will come in and actually check if the company has done their due diligence in protecting from attacks. So if you go to the next slide.
If I may just to add one thing here, obviously the list here is not for naming or shaming, it's really just for a representation that it affects everyone. Even larger organizations actually have very large budgets and have done a lot of good work in creating their layers. But the word out there is really about resilience. And that resilience can only be achieved exactly through a focus on a lot of that prevention, but also the focus on getting early signs as quickly as possible to react when things happen. And that's exactly what Nicholas is going to talk about. But I also really want to stress the point that you said. It's not only about the larger organizations. It's also like the smaller ones. We might think, like if you folks might be like a smaller org, you might say, we're not an attack, like preferable company. We're not working in the industry that eventually is, interesting. But the fact is that many of these gangs, many of these groups, they actually attack at scale. Their business is a scale model. So they will actually go into the smaller organizations that eventually have more limited budgets because exactly they know that it's going to be easy. And it's all about then automation in AI. I always used to say for many years that if we want to see actually automation, DevOps at scale, and usage of AI, you're going to see it exactly in things like ransomware groups, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, so it's a recent trend that we see a massive uptake in these kinds of attacks, especially against smaller targets. And yeah, we see that regulators are trying to catch up. They introduce local or even on European scale, we now have legislation to actually protect businesses. But if you fail to do your due diligence on that respect, and oftentimes they choose wording to say you have protected with state-of-the-art technology and processes. And if you fail to do this and you get an incident, you might even have to pay up on top of it towards the regulator, yeah, for not handling your security posture correctly. And these are GDPR fines, recent GDPR fines that have been handed out, that are an example of this. And you see that the amounts are getting bigger. Normally, companies used to say, okay, nobody is getting fined over this, but this is changing because there's more legislation that covers this, but also legislators are catching up on actually enforcing, making companies pay up.
Also, and this is not only happening in Europe, right?
Yeah, and this is just in Europe. And obviously, if you land on this list, your reputation obviously also takes a big hit.
Yeah. Regions like Asia Pacific is also like really picking up when it comes to regulatory requirements, and these things are becoming the norm, and eventually, like for good reasons, as you said, like for the ones that haven't actually done the due diligence, they can actually showcase that investment, not only a question of money, but also like processes and people. It obviously it's going to be reflection into that.
Yeah, and to actually see how an attacker these days performs an attack, I thought it would be a good way to actually look at a published cyber advisory by CISA, one of the big organizations that covers research into these attacks. And in this case, it's about the Blackbuster ransomware group, which is like a ransomware as a service operation. There's multiple stages to such an operation these days. It's like completely, there's people just handling data exfiltration. There's people just handling the acquisition of new targets. There's people just handling the platform and renting the platform for ransomware attacks out to other people.
Access brokers.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. And when you look at how they evolve their attacks, there's a clear pattern that you see. So if you go to the next slide into the report, we actually see they're using valid credentials for access. So any firewall you have or whatever, it will not stop this because that it's a valid access they are using, and they are getting into your castle through the door, through the front door. And once they're in, they're actually using legitimate tools that your IT department is using, like network scanners that are already there on the machines, or they're abusing drivers or software that is used for daily business. And again, the endpoint protection does not react because it's legitimate software. It's supposed to be there. And then for privilege escalation, they bring tools that are specially obfuscated through the use of AI and automation, that they actually bypass your specific security environment on this client. And in the end, they laterally move through your environment, again, through legitimate means like remote desktop, which is widely used across industries. And if there's a remote desktop connection from an internal host on your network to another host, most solutions that are in place today won't detect this and won't stop this. And that's why they are so extremely successful, even though spending in protective measures in terms of firewall and EDR is continually rising. They can still be successful, as we saw with the victims. They probably had these measures in place, but it was not enough to actually detect these tactics that are used today.
Yeah, and like typically this is really what we call a slow and low type of attack, so that they actually are not tripping these detectors that you might have at the endpoint level, for example, or the proxy, like the north and south pipe of the communication, and using off-the-land tools. So that PowerShell, that Python libraries eventually that lives there, not only like obviously plugins and drivers from things like Mimikatz, that eventually we have like a lot of good acumen in detecting them, but they will do a lot of things exactly with these living other land tools, and therefore not tripping any of these detections when it comes to the endpoint specifically detection, which makes it super hard, exactly.
Yeah, and then there's oftentimes, or I must say, almost in all cases with these attackers these days, there's a step where they actually exfiltrate your data before going further, like encryption or whatever their first goal is. They will first exfiltrate a huge amount of data from your network and try to do a double extortion, as it's called. They want to actually extort you on the data they have and publishing that data and the reputable loss you will incur to actually force you into paying the ransom fee for the encryption. So this is totally common these days. Almost all gangs we track do this. And again, they use totally classic tooling for this. They use like a web upload for it, or they use like a standard on Linux, like a standard rclone command that's just in the system always. And so therefore, if you don't have measures in place to track these anomalies in your network, seeing like large spikes of transferred data from a host that's not expected, then you have no way of detecting this through traditional means on the endpoint. And in the end, these reports always contain like indicators of compromise. And a lot of customers I go to, they don't have a means to actually say, okay, we now know this IP is bad. How do I actually track if it was there? So having like a history of network traffic can actually hugely help in detecting these things when the reports get published, and remediating ongoing low and slow campaigns.
All right, so let's go now talk exactly on how that actually, why this happens, why there's often these gaps when it comes to not only the visibility, but also the ability to actually try to prevent, but also stop at its tracks, like at the very beginning of what eventually Nicholas and I have discussed of like the shift left from a cybersecurity perspective. It's not only in DevOps. That shift left means going really into the early stage of that attack kill chain, trying to reduce the damage and eventually not allowing them to actually move laterally and obtain escalation of whatever that is, eventually as their goals. Let me start by saying that based on my experience, and I worked in the network field for many years now, a lot of the times because of the complexity of networks, and I believe that eventually everyone here would agree that although there's a very big and substantial adoption of cloud only, of SaaS services, there's still like a hefty amount of data center-ish, like residual or sometimes not residual, because again, it might be the core of the business, of that specific business footprint. And this is where eventually things get a bit muddy, right? Because you believe that that firewall exactly at the perimeter is going to prevent and show you everything that is required from a traffic perspective, but it might not. Like exactly to Nicholas' point, someone might have obtained a credential and there's a VPN access which is legitimate. No way to track that. And eventually very difficult to actually see what that account is now doing from a network perspective within your organization. And that's exactly often also difficult, specifically when you don't have equipments that are capable of actually running things like an agent, like an EDR agent. What about OT or IoT, which is exactly very prevalent in these type of attacks? So there's nothing to flag. There's no firewall hits. There's no egress traffic. We're actually talking about lateral movement within your moat castle, like inside the trusted zone that eventually you have. Using exactly those native tools, trying to very slowly understand what is around them and taking benefit of these channels of communication, whether it's like file shares or remote management channels, which is again very common for IT to actually to leverage, and just like going about their days and trying to see exactly where they can move next and what information is there available to increase credential privileges, for example, or just like eventually start exfiltrating data. Or destroying, by the way, depending on the motive, destruction of data might be also like one of their goals. And by the way, often one of the causes is because that complexity of the network. people will start thinking, well, but I have like a bunch of switches and routers and firewalls even within the organization, separating things like business units, different VLANs for network arrangement. Not VLAN should not be seen as security. And then like when you think like, what should I actually log of this? And you start seeing the volume of traffic and you start seeing the complexity of actually collecting all of this detracts the majority of the organizations, right? And this is eventually why people kind of default into the endpoint in an application perspective as their means to cover whatever they need to cover and not looking into the complexity of actually getting the visibility at the network level. But the reality is, and this is not us saying, like eventually analysts from Gartner and many other institutions, organizations have declared that nowadays it's not only like a question of the triad, where you have the endpoint, the network, and the SIEM, like the NDR and the SIEM to provide that visibility. It's actually like expanding also into the application realm. So now it's like it's a cube, eventually of visibility. But the network is a must element because the network is often that ground truth that the attacker cannot evade. They might evade a EDR agent. They might evade, I don't know, an identity threat detection and response platform. But when it comes to the network, it's the life and blood. Like they need the network. And those tracks, those breadcrumbs that are left across, I don't know, their attempts of actually doing net scans, for example, or doing establishments of communications on specific ports, attempts, all of that is going to be there for that visibility, right? And obviously, it's very hard for you to detect exactly that east to west traffic within your network without that visibility. There is some form of visibility when it comes to the endpoint traffic, and there's an association to a process. But what if there isn't? What if it's actually like traffic that is just broadcasts and multicasts and attempts of like brute forcing at scale, not going into any specific process that even is listening, for example? All of those things are, again, breadcrumbs that are available. And once more, what happens when you have dumb devices? Again, those IoTs or OTs, specifically critical in things like power and utilities, CNIs, where the network is, again, that life and blood of visibility, right? You can and you should obviously have, like I stated before, that triad of where the SIEM and the endpoint and the network brings you that joint visibility that eventually you really require for being able to then to start correlating behaviors at the network level with identity and endpoint to actually see an intent of something happening at your organization or within your organization. Uncovering exactly behaviors that might not be normal in things that are legitimate from a usage perspective, like those remote desktops or file share accesses or remote management protocols that eventually we leverage at scale to do the orchestration and automation that we need to run our businesses, right? So what obviously we believe that SecOps teams require to have that is really that goodness of the SIEM that gives you that core visibility of everything that you might require from the identity, the endpoint, bringing all of the data from that goodness of the EDR and the ITDRs and all of the Rs eventually, plus also the network for that advanced behavior monitoring also and visibility at the raw network level, where you can see not only north and south, traffic, but also like that east and west network traffic that eventually is very hard to pick up. Seeing that protocol activity, the legitimate protocol activity, and things that eventually are not usual, the spikes of data transfer, like Nicholas was saying, the logons eventually into systems that are not tracked by any ITDR or EDR at like 3 a.m. Usage of ports and protocols by a user that was not common at all. These things are exactly the life and blood that NDR can give you as data points for you to correlate it and see it very early on and stop it. And with Logpoint, we have exactly that. We can provide you that SIEM at the core with that central alerting correlation, where you can bring all of your identity, endpoint, and all of the other things eventually from an application context point of view, have the incident investigation workflow end-to-end, but having the NDR as that lens into the network, near real-time detections at the network level, and bringing that goodness into the SIEM. So you can actually do all of the end-to-end triage and investigation in response that is required. Talking a bit about the Logpoint NDR, we kind of split it into modules. We have the NDR AI detect and the NDR AI prevent. So the AI detect is all about exactly giving that raw visibility of the network, really storing the raw data of the network flow of everything that eventually is within the tapped network interfaces that the appliance is connected to, and giving you the complete visibility with all MAC addresses, IPs, asset mapping that eventually is required for you to start getting the goodness out of the platform in terms of detections of things that are more heuristic, obviously, from a ground level, from like brute force attempts in, I don't know, 5 minutes, 50 brute force attempts of logging into RDP, to the more complex ones that eventually will require the UBA, the user entity analysis behavior, to actually understand patterns of usage of applications, of users, of communication between devices. Like we never saw device A and device B communicating, let alone out of business hours, for example. Those are the kind of things that we can immediately provide you the visibility on, because we have that advanced anomaly detection engine that works at multiple levels, packed together, obviously, with the signature script models, as I said, like the heuristic kind of functions. And all of that data at scale is leveraged at the sensor level and then outputting those notifications back into your SIEM. The prevent, as the name really implies, is the ability to, as we do these near real-time detections at the sensor level, have the ability to either directly through mechanisms, for example, as a TCP reset, to kind of break the connection as soon as we see the threat, or orchestrating responses with your own network equipments, whether it's eventually at the firewall level or the proxy level, or even at the switch level, if that's the case, to try to isolate a given asset, block a given IOC, like Nicholas showcased previously, so that we can stop immediately that attack in its tracks, and therefore make sure that we prevent further damage. Anything that you want to highlight here, Nicholas? I think this is a really good overview.
Yeah, actually, the cool thing is the prevent is actually selectively capable to act. So you don't have to say, okay, any detection will prevent the network and block my network from working. But you have very fine-grained control over when to actually block, and this can often be kind of seen as a quasi automation layer all in one platform, right? It's like a little SOAR built into the NDR that can respond immediately and pretty quickly and actually stop lateral movement pretty efficiently. And at the same time, you can have the richer alerting, for example, of the anomaly detection feed into like an analyst's inbox to actually further analyze things. And you have the correlation on this larger model with the attack chains, right? Which you probably will showcase as well.
Yeah, and it's a very important point, by the way. Very often we hear from customers when they start looking into NDRs, one of the biggest concerns, by the way, is complexity.
Yeah.
It's too complex for me. I cannot handle this. We take it into a level that we believe that we cater for that simplicity. We take the complexity into our own box, and we provide exactly the things that matter for the analysts, for that anomaly layover into things that eventually they have as part of their inbox, as you were stating, from a SecOps analyst perspective, but also exactly on the ability to very fine-tuned and fine-grained, tune exactly the response and things that eventually are critical. You might obviously want to have a manual intervention versus not an automated intervention. So simplicity is there out of the box. It's not a complex platform. It's not going to be like months and months of daunting fine-tuning, because this is often a concern. But at the same time, if people want to really go deep into that rabbit hole and do almost like anything in terms of fine tuning, the platform is also there for you.
Yeah. And also in practice, I regularly see that this gets not just used by the security operations team, but also by the network operators, because this provides excellent visibility into what the network is actually doing. And oftentimes it can actually pinpoint problems with the network operations faster than the tooling of the network operators.
100%. 100%. It's a good observation. All right. Let's go from your perspective on how this actually is done.
Yeah, sure. So the thing is, you talked about already about the triad, you know, building EDR, SIEM, NDR, and maybe even application specific logging like into the perfect solution. Our experience is this takes a lot of time and it's never really finished, right? And what you need underneath this triad is actually like a operations center for your security, where analysts and processes are established to actually use these tools to baseline, to react to incidents, to do threat hunting. All of these services are there. And to actually get the complete picture, you need all of this eventually. And our experience is that this is actually quite a daunting task, especially in the mid-market segment, right? Where there's few analysts and it's hard to establish the required processes. It's maybe also hard to obtain all of the licensing for the software within budget, you know. These are the challenges a lot of our customers face. And that's kind of why we set out as an MSSP to actually start talking about NDR first with our customers a lot of the time, because most of the time some kind of EDR solution is already there and can be improved on the process level. And building the SIEM needs to be kicked off quite soon, but it takes time to actually mature. And so starting outright with NDR provides, from our perspective, a huge boost in visibility and remediation. Even, for example, the topic of the 24/7 analyst, you know, normal mid-market company kind of wishes to have some kind of solution that protects them 24/7, but they don't have the staff availability for somebody to react, and they can't pay someone else to do it because it's very expensive. So actually saying, okay, we start with NDR and we start with AI prevent enabled on certain key components of the network lateral movement detections actually gives you almost right from the start a 24/7 reaction component that can stop sophisticated attacks in their tracks until a manual intervention comes by and actually does the cleanup through EDR and other measures. And that's kind of something we have done since the days of you know, NDR Munin still being a standalone product, and we saw great success with it. But what we also saw is that there's optimization potential when you have like a baseline NDR appliance in your network and you have like a baseline EDR system, you have your firewall, you have all these other components. It gets very tedious going through all of these systems, tuning them individually, oftentimes to the same false positives or whatever is actually happening at the moment. Having like a layer on top that actually understands the tools below and can interact with them is a huge boon. And that's why we were very happy when Munin was acquired by Logpoint, because by now there's like a perfect integration that makes NDR a first-party citizen, so to speak, in the SIEM. And for us as MSSP, who will nowadays oftentimes offer this whole package on the right as a service, the SOC component, it's just so much easier because you don't have to baseline all these individual components. You don't have to care about all the individual automations. You get, because you started with NDR, the day you install the SIEM, you have your first component that can react and in the network and that can see in the network. And that just means all of these processes are much simpler to establish.
Love it. Yeah, love the perspective of the agentless and easy to begin the journey with the NDR.
Yeah, that's
Even
like
having
one
to
of
go to the
the
ADR.
agentless, and just it comes out of the box with so many of these predefined rules. You don't have to actually do the whole use case analysis and stuff that just takes time with the SIEM. It's great
100%.
because you then also can capture advanced threats like insider threats when you have a perfect, use case set up with your SIEM. But the NDR provides just immediate protection against attacks on the network level. And yeah, it gives you a very short time to value, so to say, right?
Yep. Next slide.
Yeah. And as Antonio already said, our mission with the customer as an MSSP is to move detection from the right, where we just come in when data exfiltration and encryption already happened, and we're doing incident response and we're trying to damage control. We want to move this as far to the left as possible. So actually not catching the attacker in the out phase when he's already achieving his goals, but detecting him in the through phase, when he's laterally moving, when he's discovering, when he's pivoting, when he tries to access credentials in the network, when he's executing something over the network on remote hosts. That's where we really want our bulk of our detection to happen. But even better, if we have a solution that's in the network in such a place where we can even detect him on the in phase, where we can see the incoming traffic from the VPN and unusual anomalies in that space, where we can see links with maybe what we often have is like static site-to-site links with other companies, and the other company gets hacked, and your trusted site-to-site link gets abused for attackers to actually lateral move into your organization. And we want to see this. We want to see the ingress of the attacker, and then already see and react. And then in the through phase, we have the prevent there, so it catches them and disables them 24/7, even if you don't have 24/7 security staff available.
I love how you said supply chain is a major scenario that it's covered obviously with NDR, that eventually would not with other tools, 100%. Yeah. From that communication level, obviously.
Always comes back to trust. You trust like your remote access software your IT team uses. You trust your partners and the links you have with them. And you kind of need something else to monitor this that's based on anomalies, based on known attack vectors. And you can't just rely on good old prevention mechanisms, because you don't want to prevent these connections and outright.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So this is again kind of how we pitch NDR to our customers. We say it's decentralized, so you can deploy multiple sensors, and you don't have to orchestrate them. You can, and that's awesome. And we provide that as a service as an MSSP, but you don't have to. For example, in the in our satellite business, it's something. Sometimes they build a project network just for the satellite, and it's detached from central IT, but still they need to monitor against threats in this environment. And so you can just deploy a sensor there and have it managed by the project team and maybe overseen by the general SecOps team. So all of these ways give a lot of flexibility on where to start and how to deploy and how to grow the NDR. Then obviously a big selling point is that it also protects against unknown threats. So a lot of groups these days use generative AI to actually generate their tooling and their malware. So it is not signatured and known bad when it gets to your network. But what they can't signature or designature is what they're doing on the network. And that's how NDR catches them.
The behavior.
Also, I mean, the full packet capture is also always a big selling point. Even if something happens, you have the perfect basis of data to do incident response. You will find them. You will find the initial C2 connection, the initial access, and you will be able to unroll all these attack phases and actually prevent the access at the very first level, and not just clean up malware. Oh, it's back 2 days later, because the access is still there.
Yeah.
And yeah, the autonomous neutralization is a big thing, and that we can deploy throughout IT, OT, and cloud pretty seamlessly. So also some customers, you know, they're switching their servers over, they're pushing them into Azure, and suddenly they lose all of their visibility, because, you know, network security group logs, if you have them, are pretty bad. Firewall appliances in the cloud are also not giving a huge amount of visibility. And that's also an area where you can say the solution is there. It can provide the visibility throughout. Yeah, so in the end, what you do is you start with this NDR, or what we do, and then we build out from there. We actually ingest all the logs from the NDR into the SIEM as one of the first things we do when we start establishing a SIEM with the customer, is actually connecting the existing NDR to it. So you have a great basis of alerts. And then we start all of the typical SIEM stuff. You know, we also look at applications, at databases, at the existing endpoints and their telemetry, at the firewalls, unknowns, network equipment that's not usually protected and looked at, like printers. You know, they also have remote connections to somewhere where somebody can come in. And through the use of Logpoint SIEM, we normalize all of this into one language, into one set of data, and can then do advanced analytics on it, and yeah, build out this whole SOC as a service, and have the NDR as like a first-class citizen within it. And yeah, this is a German slide, I'm sorry, but this is kind of how we build out our SOC. And it's important to realize that a SOC actually manages a multitude of processes. So it's not just that, you know, threat prevention aspect that's like one little slice within it. You have to do, you have to integrate threat intelligence. You have to maybe deploy honeypots. You have to integrate the existing IDS, IPS solutions. You do the machine learning through the sensor, and then you collect all of this and prioritize and classify, and have actually analysts go through it and triage the resulting scenarios. And only in this way, if you then use that and get a feedback loop, then you have like a process established that actually has a very short mean time to detect and respond, and actually always improves in quality and adapts to current threats. Because just the solutions alone, if you just get an NDR and get some kind of SIEM and baseline it for 2 weeks and then leave it alone, it will degrade in quality. You have to have these processes to actually keep up to date with preventing threats from the outside and inside.
All right.
Thank you very much, guys. That was an awesome presentation, and I hope we gave a lot of good things into that presentation that will open a lot of new things for our CISOs today. What's coming next? Next, please. So I will send you this afternoon, CET time, an email with all the links that you can find here. You can request a demo on the Logpoint website. We have also something very important for you. You can start with the Logpoint Security Maturity Assessment if you want to start gauging how mature you are in terms of cyber defense. We also have a blog post dedicated to that, how to detect lateral movements before it spreads. Next, please. So one click and another one, please. So you should stop burying your head in the sand. That's with the geostrich rear. Trust Logpoint SIEM plus NDR and our super partners for sure. Next, please, and it will be the end of this webinar. If you trust SIEM plus NDR, you will become a super happy CISO, and you will be able to live on vacation very with a very cool
I'm in.
approach and
I'm in,
take
I'm
the
in.
benefits of your cocktails.
Yeah, it's actually a feedback we get from customers regularly, that they say, "Oh wow, now that we have all of these processes, I can go on vacation like
Yeah,
never
absolutely.
before. I can turn off my phone and feel rest assured all is taken care of."
I think,
Thank you very much, Nicolas.
Yeah.
And Antonio, thank you very much for being with us today, tomorrow. This afternoon, I will send you a link with the replay of this presentation. Now let's keep in touch and don't hesitate to come back to us. And I will give you the contact details of Antonio and Nicolas as well into this email this afternoon. So you will have everything to stay in touch and to keep the relation, or to start a very good relation with OHB and Logpoint.
Do reach out. I would like to say a big thank you to Nicholas for the awesome insights.
Yep.
I hope that everyone that eventually is in this call and eventually is going to look into the video extracts value out of the insights that we shared. So regardless of being or now or a future Logpoint or OHB customer, we're all defenders. So we're here exactly to share what we can to make our cyberspace safer. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure, I must say.
Dankeschön.
Thank you. Goodbye. See you next time.